Greetings, friends. It's Pat at Dancing Moon Travel here with another episode of Let's Talk Travel. Welcome to all of you who are catching us live, and a special welcome to those of you who aren't able to join the live and are catching us on an instant replay. We're glad that you're out there as well. I am very excited to have our guest this evening, Jason Odell, on board to talk with us about his recent experience leading a group of photographers on a small ship exploration of the Adriatic coast of Croatia. Jason is a professional photographer, a photo tour leader. He specializes in nature, landscape, and travel photography, and is actually an independent contractor with us at Dancing Moon Travel as well. So, welcome, Jason.
Hey, Pat. Good to see you.
Good to see you always. And could you just start by giving our guests a quick overview of your bio, what you do, and where you're located and so forth?
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. I've been a professional photographer full time since 2010. Prior to that, I dabbled in many things. I have a PhD in biology from University of California in Riverside. I moved to Colorado Springs in 2002, and that's where I'm at now. In 2010, I had been doing photography on the side for several years prior to that, and I made it my business. And one of the things about the business, in addition to educating, I've written ebooks and I do online classes for people. But the best part is being able to take people on photo workshops. And usually that's a photo safari. We go out to, some national park or some area and do landscape photography or nature photography. But I don't know, I guess about 2016 or so, we kind of hooked up and we started putting together more.
Now, wait, hooked up. You got to make that sure this isn't the modern day translation.
Right. all the hey, I'm speaking to the boomers out there. We connected on I think it was Meetup or something, and
right.
Started putting together some itineraries, and so that's kind of grown. And when I can take people either on a private charter or co-opt a cruise like we'll talk about in Croatia, it's an interesting experience because we can go to the places that you would go on a normal tour, but you're with a group of people who want to take pictures and, more importantly, want to take better pictures. And so that's where I come in to give them creative ideas so that you come home with photographs instead of snapshots.
Cool. Excellent. So let's just dive into Croatia. Would you say that this is a destination that lived up to or maybe even exceeded your expectations?
Oh my goodness, it was outstanding. I had always heard that it's an excellent destination. It's a little bit far out there for those of us in the western part of the U.S. to get there, but it was actually pretty easy to get to. It exceeded my expectations because of the cultural diversity and mix. I wasn't expecting what I got, and it was just better in all counts. Absolutely wonderful.
That is, I remember you first messaged me as soon as you got to that first hotel and said home run. So yeah. And you hadn't even gotten on the ship yet. So
no, everybody was really happy with our accommodations, and then we'll talk later probably about the ship we were on.
Right. Now, and speaking of that, there are a number of ways that you can approach an exploration of Croatia. We can do land only, which we do. We can do a coastal cruise, which we obviously have done. We can do a combination approach and can customize that experience. And we can customize a trip to Croatia to fit most any preference and budget. For your photo group, we went with the small ship cruise experience, and we added on a couple of days pre and post. And so let's just break that down. How many people joined you for this journey?
Well, we had We had 10. I had 10 clients. We had more at one point, but with some COVID stuff and some illnesses, we didn't get, everyone didn't quite make it. But, with the last 2 years, I should say 2 years now, right, that we've been dealing with this. I was really happy to have the 10 people that were there. It was a great group. And, we all met in Split on our own. We got to our first hotel, and we came in a couple of nights early for several reasons, not the least of which is to make sure everyone was there on time and not literally miss the boat, but also the time zone difference between here and Croatia. For me, it was I want to say it was
I think 8 hours.
8 or 9 hours. It was a lot. It was at least 8 hours of time difference, and that's significant when you're trying to get ramped up. So having a day where literally nothing was on our itinerary except do what you need to do, get yourself unpacked and settled in, and find some food and some coffee or whatever, and
Right.
explore. And so we did some stuff on the front end. Myself and some of our clients, we went to some places, but just sort of on our own.
Very good. Now you tell us about the small ship yacht, because this is kind of a yacht experience. You've been on an ocean cruise, I know, because we booked
Right.
booked that. And how would you compare this yacht experience to sailing on an ocean going cruise?
Well, I would say that just about everything was superior in every way. Starting with the fact that on our particular ship, we only had, I think there were 25 cabins maybe total. So that was really nice. You're in a smaller group. That just made everyone feel more at ease. Um, there was never this feeling of being herded around. Um, the accommodations were, I mean, luxurious is the only way I could describe them. I mean, I've had decent cabins on ocean cruises, but these cabins would just top that completely. I mean, we're talking bathrooms that you could walk around in, not have to, cram yourself into a closet that was a
Isn't that
shower.
funny? Smaller ship, bigger
Oh
bathroom,
yeah.
but and the finishes are lovely. You don't have the clinging silk shower curtain that wraps around
Yeah.
and hugs you. It's such a wet, that's no fun. Uh,
Yeah, it
but
was amazing.
yeah, it really is. It's kind of like comparing apples and watermelons when you
Yeah.
talk about it. It's just that there's a totally different experience. So people who think they don't like cruises would totally find themselves. It's more like a floating resort hotel. More
Yeah, it was, your own private luxury yacht practically. And there was two things that really stood out about this particular style of travel that really appealed to me. The first one is that, and this was huge, was that unlike most of the cruises that I've been on, and you're well versed in this, most cruise ships sail overnight. And so you've got to get back on board right at dinner time. And
yeah,
you get good meals, it's all great. But you've got to be back on that ship by 4:30 p.m. or so.
4:30 is typical. Yeah,
Yeah. Now, as a photographer, that's hard for me because I like doing photographs in the evening, in the sunset, and during the twilight hours where you can get photos that you just cannot get anywhere else. And I think I sent you one that we'll talk about later that shows a photo captured at that time. But the other thing is that this ship was in port overnight, and that was incredibly cool because number one, we weren't forced to get back on board. Number two, we were allowed to explore all evening long, go to dinner as we wanted to go, eat as much or as little as you wanted to do. You had a tremendous amount of flexibility on meals, so no issues there. And I know you want to talk about food probably, but the food on the ship was a sort of a buffet breakfast followed by a 4-course lunch that for most people was enough food for a day. But if you wanted to go back out and get your gelato or go get some local, just a little, cafe, it was all doable. So that made it really, really nice. That flexibility of and then not being underway at night. You didn't have the ship's engines running. You weren't doing this. You were kind of, it's a much calmer situation.
You could literally get on and off the ship several times during the evening. You
Mm-hmm.
wanted to come back and you know, if you've had a tour and explored and got your sunset photos, and you wanted to maybe go someplace really nice for dinner, you could come back and take off your shorts and put on some decent clothes and go to an upscale restaurant, because we'll talk about that. But there's options to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the
But
one interesting thing before we move on, I should point out the biggest difference between this and being on like a cruise ship was sometimes the way you are docked at port. Um, the yachts actually, there's not a lot of spaces in these smaller towns in their ports. And so what happens is the yacht cruises, the ships, they tether up next to each other. And so you literally have to walk across the decks of multiple boats to get ashore. So you need to be a little bit nimble to do that. That's a difference. But you know, it was no problem, and the crew was extremely helpful for anybody who needed a little extra assistance, making sure that you could get off of that boat safely.
And those of you who may have done a river cruise in Europe or elsewhere would be familiar with that, because the river cruise lines, they do that as well. So you could be the difference with this, usually you just walk straight across from one ship, you go across the little gangway to the next, instead of having to go up and over, which you frequently have to
Yes.
do with the river cruises. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about itinerary. Any well, let's just look at some of these photos you sent me. You sent me some amazing shots here. Let's kind of just talk about the itinerary and these images.
Okay. Well, this photo was one that I got sort of before we started our cruise. So I had an extra couple days in Split, which is where we started. And this is Klis, Klis Fortress. And so we took an Uber and went up there and explored the fortress. And it was cool. A lot of this stuff was built in the 1500s when the Dalmatian coast, and I think that's an important thing. Croatia is kind of a piecemeal country. There was inland Croatia, and then there was Dalmatia, which is what we're really talking about, is that Dalmatian coast. And it was under Venetian control for most of, from like the late 1400s to almost 1800. So a lot of Venetian influence that you'll see there.
And one of the things about Croatia, folks, that and I've got to tell you this: when you go to Rome and when you go to Athens and you go to the Acropolis, for example, you're looking at ruins. You're exploring the ruins. When you go to the coast of Croatia, you are looking at these medieval buildings that they are not ruins. They are standing, functional city. Their people are living in them. Their businesses are in them. You're not looking at ruins. You are looking at, and some of date back to the Roman days. So you are you're seeing these cities as they were built when originally. They're still there. It's amazing.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And if you can get around on the cobblestones, there's lots of little stairs and back alley, lots of climbing steps, but it's amazing to just explore. Laundry out in the hanging across, and windows, and everything was certain colors and styles depending on which town you were in. It was gorgeous.
It was gorgeous, tiny little alleyways and things, and it was just fabulous. But it helps if you have a degree of fitness to be able to do everything. Frankly, there were things when I went that I had to pass on because I don't have I have this bad ankle and so forth. But I still, for me, it was one of the most magical places I've ever been. Here's another image. I love this, Jason.
Well, you mentioned ancient buildings. The circular part that you see here is a vestibule. It's a part of the Palace of Diocletian in Split. And what you're looking at is up through the roof there, and you're seeing the more modern, i.e. 1500s vintage Venetian church tower. The Palace of Diocletian was built in like 300 AD as a retirement palace for the Roman Emperor Diocletian, who actually resigned his position and decided to retire. And he lived in Split, which is where he was from originally, until he died in, I don't know, 311 or 312 or something like that. But so a lot of that stuff is really old ruins, and we were doing a photo walk in that nice evening light where you get that golden hour time.
Beautiful, just beautiful. And talk about golden hour. Here you have one of your photos. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's the harbor at Split. We were walking back and saw this amazing sunset, so we stopped and took some photos.
Most excellent. And this is where it's different than the cruise lines, because usually you're taking a shot from the deck of a cruise ship as you leave port. But right here, you're right there in the city. And one thing that I found really interesting, it's so safe in Croatia. People
Yeah, we
out.
didn't have any issues.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be aware of your surroundings, but we didn't have any issues.
Yeah, that it's a very safe destination. Like Italy is known for its pickpockets. It's not that way in Croatia. Of course, you still exercise the normal cautions when you're traveling. You don't want to totally forget things, but people out at all hours of the night, up into the evening. Single women walking unescorted. So yeah, I felt totally safe the whole time I was there. This is a picture of your vessel.
Yes, that was the MS Desire, which we were on board for 7 nights. Like I said, it was just a fantastic, luxurious experience.
And here, this is. So
now we're looking at, this is wandering around through the old city in Split. So these are just some of the kinds of things you might come across on our photo walks. So taking detailed shots of the lamps and the shutters, and you can see the old brickwork, the stonework and the carvings.
Just beautiful shots. And here we have landscape photographers will have a field day here, right?
Yes, if you get the right conditions, it can be quite nice. So this was actually on our cruise, and this is in Krka National Park. So we took a bus ride. It was about an hour. And then there was a pretty good walk to get down to these waterfalls, but they were amazing. And we set up and we did some, just landscape style photography. It was a kind of overcast day, which actually was perfect for the waterfall photos. We had a really good time.
Excellent, excellent. And here we have.
This is, now I mentioned that Venetian style. You probably recognize that tower as being something right out of Venice, with the triangular pointy roofs and the orange tiles, and that's the Croatian flag in the foreground. This is the town of Trogir, and we had a very nice stay there as well. There's a castle right there, and you pull into the harbor, and there was a castle right there as you're coming in.
Yeah. I have to say cool. that was one of my favorite little stops there. Trogir was just gorgeous, and I bought my sister a beautiful gold necklace there. They have some shoppers, if you like, it's not just photographers, folks. If you like shopping, if you're a foodie, Croatia is an amazing destination for hikers, adventure travelers. It's just something for everyone here. So, but Trogir was one of my favorite stops there. The shops were gorgeous, and it's just charming. Here we go with another beautiful. The light on this is amazing.
This is Hvar. Hvar was fantastic. It was a fabulous little city on this island, and I guess we should mention, Pat. There are places you cannot go to on the large ships in Croatia. You might be in Split, you might be in Dubrovnik, but you're probably not going to Hvar. You're probably not going to Trogir. So these are places that only the yachts get into. And so you won't see them on other kinds of trips. There's ways you can take ferries. If you were staying in Split, you could take a ferry, but I wouldn't really want to do that. So
yeah, the land trips, we can arrange excursions for you to get to all of these places as well if you're a land person. But I thought the yacht experience, I don't know how you would improve on that with a land trip, but they have some amazing accommodations there. You could stay, for example, Hvar had some incredible 5-star plus hotels. So you could do Split, Hvar, and Dubrovnik, for example, as a land based sort. And
Mhm.
Zagreb, of course, also. So many ways we could talk to you about that. But I love this shot.
Yeah, it
Beautiful.
was just a perfect evening. We took a nice walk around the backside, and that late afternoon light was just magical, golden hour. And again, this was a shot that I probably wouldn't have had if I had been on a traditional cruise, simply because we wouldn't have been able to go there, and we would have had been back on board the ship well before that was taken.
Exactly. And this is
So this is in Cortula.
Cortula. I recognized
Yes,
that. Yes.
and that was probably one of the most. We pulled into that port, and it was just gorgeous. It was we were just looking around at each other going, wow, this is incredible. And legend has it that Marco Polo was either staying there or might have even been imprisoned there at some point in the 1200s, when he was, because again, this goes back to Venetian times, right? So
Right.
Venice had a lot of influence in that time over the Dalmatian coast, and so Marco Polo was supposedly in this area. And
Yeah.
I
I
think
think wasn't
actually,
he actually they say born in Hvar, maybe?
no, well, that was one of those things
Yeah,
where
I don't they,
he's from there, but he's not. He was from Venice, but Venice included the Dalmatian coast back then.
yeah,
So saying one was from Venice, he was, it's one of those legend things.
yeah.
So take it with whatever, but it's still really darn cool.
It's really darn cool.
And I think if you go to the next picture with the evening, yeah, that one, that's Cortula, and this was captured early in the evening. Again, a shot that I could only do because we were able to stay in port overnight and get on and off the boat freely. Got a little bit windy that evening, but this was good. This was actually taken at like 6:30 p.m. local time, so it was after the sun had set. But it's the kind of photography that I like to do, so that people who come with me, at least, those are the kinds of photos that you don't get when you're snapshotting.
Yeah.
And we go out and do those kinds of excursions in addition to the regular side. We took all the tours. We had our wonderful guide. We got the history lessons, and those were wonderful. And then we could explore on our own.
And then you kind of saw places. Oh, I got to come back here when the lot, get the evening lot.
Exactly.
So yeah, and I mean, it's a destination for photographers. The non-photographer companions are going to be just as happy as a photographer who's getting the shots they want. So it's a destination for all people of all interests. This is just a charming little shot
Yeah,
here.
just one of the kinds of things that when you're not focusing on, all the stuff around you, sometimes it's good to just zoom in and see the details. And for me, that's something that I teach in my photo excursions, because you can get overwhelmed in these places, and they're full of tourists, they're full of people, they can get quite crowded. And so finding little still lifes and finding little scenes or vignettes to bring back. Not every photo you take has to be the giant 2-page, heroic photo,
Right.
and
But
so
then you do some of those too.
well, you've got to do this. Now that's Dubrovnik, and the Game of Thrones aficionados will probably recognize this area as being the King's Landing, because that's indeed where they shot those scenes. But you're looking at the walled city of Dubrovnik, which was, the walls were built in the 1500s, and they're still right there. And the only time Dubrovnik ever came under artillery fire, under siege, if you will, was in the 1990 Croatia, or the Yugoslavian Civil War. Believe it or not, Dubrovnik had a pretty good arrangement with the Venetians and the locals, and as a trading port, they were pretty much left alone the entire time.
Very good. And I like this picture too. Just
Yes, we were sitting at a sidewalk cafe in Dubrovnik, which was our port of disembarkation. And a bunch of us were having some coffee, having a having a cold Coca-Cola on the morning, and this parade started down the street. I'm not kidding, Pat. It was a parade, and it was all majorettes. So like teenage girl majorette lines from all over Croatia. Like they'd come from all these different areas. They came to Dubrovnik, and they paraded through the street. And
Wow.
this woman was in the apartment above the street, and she came out and started looking down to see what was going on. And that was a cool photo.
I love this. The average person like myself, I'd be taking pictures of the parade going on, but the photographer is looking for the side story. I
Well,
love
we did
this.
both.
Yeah,
We did both, but it was very cool and just completely unexpected. So
yeah.
it was a great trip.
I love that about travel is you plan out things and then you marvel at the unexpected little things that happen along. I was amazed, speaking about unexpected, to find Croatia to be such a great place for foodies. The food was amazing.
Um, I didn't need to eat for about a week after I got home. So, uh, if you like Italian style, Mediterranean seafood, pizza, cuisine, you're good to go. And if you like gelato, you're really good to go. I think that was a fun thing to do, is find ice cream, gelato in each little town. But the food was incredible. I mean, the stuff that we had aboard the ship was absolutely top notch. I couldn't believe the quality that we got. Local ingredients, locally sourced food. Breads were fantastic.
I
Um,
mean, it was. It's like you. I mean, they bake on board. They have this small little galley kitchen, and what they turn out of there is absolutely nothing short of amazing, and so fresh. I mean, farm to table. Melons never tasted so good. I came home addicted, frankly, to their olive oil,
oh
and
yes.
and the cabbage salad that is such a staple of their culture. Uh, I fix myself one of those several times a week for my lunch. I loved it. Nothing but just vinegar and oil, a little salt and pepper, and whatever you have handy. Your cabbage and anything you have in the kitchen, just put it in, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, and one thing we found was going out to eat was not hard.
Yeah.
Almost every single one of these port towns, their business is tourism, and they speak English. Most of them have a menu outside. You can look at the prices and decide if that's the zone you want to be in and what kind of food you want. There was no I mean, I mentioned seafood, but there was no shortage of other proteins as well. And on board the ship, they were taking care of the vegetarians too, so they had options for everybody.
Yeah, the fresh vegetables were amazing on this trip, and I had a great hamburger, the French fries, and I mean, it was just whatever it was.
Did you
Um,
try the black risotto?
I did not get that. You mentioned that before.
Oh, it was wonderful.
I,
It was very well. It was risotto, but they cook it and it's black because it's tinted with actual squid ink. Now that sounds really weird and gross, but
a
a little bit of
briny
a
kind.
briny kind of character to it, but it's earthy and briny at the same time. It was excellent, and it's one of the signature options in Croatia.
I see, I'm going to have to go back.
I guess you
I
are.
missed that. I would like that. So how as a getting back to the photography, as a photographer, how would you rate on scale of 1 to 10? What would you give Croatia?
Well, depending on how you do your itinerary, I would give it about an 11. It was if you like travel photography, if you like street photography, a little bit trickier for landscape photography. And I only say that because, to get to some of those inland places, you would have to be there very early, and that's not always feasible for the best light for a true landscape photographer. But I did not regret bringing my tripod for some of those later evening shots that we got. Um, I mean, doorways, alleyways, windows, people, and then just the amazing, you know, cityscapes that you can capture there, as well as creative stuff we did from the ship. So I absolutely wouldn't hesitate to go back. I would highly recommend it. And then if someone was really into photography, possibly working with with you to put together a custom excursion,
Yeah.
or something like that, because it does get to be a little bit tricky with trying to be somewhere before sunrise. That's a
Right.
different kind of trip. So for a
Right.
photography vacation, it is top notch.
Excellent. What surprised you about Croatia?
I think what really surprised me was just, well, I mean, just how diverse and friendly the people were. They knew English, they knew German, they spoke Croatian, they could make it all work. Everybody was just super super friendly. We had no trouble getting around. Um, I felt safe the whole time, like you were mentioning, and just, I guess, as we Americans, if it's more than 100 years old, to us that seems really old. So I guess if we were from Europe, we wouldn't think about it in the same way. But going to a place where you're seeing, oh yeah, this was constructed in 1563 or whatever it was, and it's still there, and you can touch this history, it's amazing.
It was amazing. And let's touch, you kind of touched on something there, ease of travel to Croatia. I mean, obviously it's a little bit of a challenge. You're flying into a small part of the country, a small uh, area. So you've got small airports. It's going to take you're not going to get a nonstop, folks. Is what I'm saying here. I don't care where you, pretty much, unless you're coming from maybe Frankfurt or something. But with all the various protocols and requirements with COVID these days, connected to the pandemic, did you find it easier or more challenging than you would have expected?
Um, I had zero issues. Some of this is, I was able to get a single connection. So I was able to fly to Frankfurt nonstop and then one hop to Split. So that works. Now, I guess the thing that you have to be concerned with is, the probably the hardest part is that a lot of times in Frankfurt, depending on where you end up with your terminals, you'll often have to go through security a second time. And when you get to somewhere like, really early in the morning after an overnight flight, the last thing you really wanted to be dealing with is extra security. Now, we had it on the way back. I didn't have it on the way out. That was fine. I actually, it's funny. Croatia has a policy where vaccinated travelers, fully vaccinated travelers, can just show their proof of vaccination and you're there. Otherwise, you need a negative test. There's no quarantining, at least not when we went. And hopefully it's only going to get better from here. It was easier to get into Croatia than it was to get back home to the U.S., to be honest. But even that was streamlined. And I told my clients, I said, look, you're getting on a plane that has, filtered, the air is exchanged every several minutes. You have to wear a mask, and everyone on that plane to get to Croatia has to either show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test. So I think that overseas flight was probably the safest part of the whole trip, because you knew that everybody was there. But we did a lot of stuff outside. There was plenty of outdoor eating, and then they came right to our ship the last day when we arrived in Dubrovnik, gave us our rapid COVID tests. We had it in our hand that evening, the negative results, and everyone was negative. There was no issues there, and we flew home, no problem.
And I when I came back, they have testing at the Dubrovnik airport.
Mm-hmm.
So walked up to the kiosk there, had your tests. They were so nice, and just sat down there for 15 minutes. You had your results, and off I went. That's the return test that the U.S. requires, and same thing. You show your. Now I had to do an outbound test because London, where I had my stopover, required that even if you're just transiting through, you had to have the test. Since I'm vaccinated, I wouldn't have even had to do that for Croatia, but since I transited through Heathrow, I had to have a test. But
lesson learned, I guess. Check your connections. Fortunately,
yes.
Frankfurt is part of the greater EU. They did not have that restriction for transiting passengers, so we were just right on through.
Very good. So, for our listeners, if anybody is intrigued about what you've heard, whether you're a photographer or just a traveler, Maybe you're moving Croatia up on that, maybe to the top of your bucket list. We have some amazing news for you. We have actually chartered an entire yacht, the Adriatic Queen, for a sailing departing next August 27th. Um, and we have optional pre and post trips for that. If you want to do the inland with Zagreb and see the Plitvice lakes and waterfalls and all, great for photographers. Talk about landscape opportunities.
Yeah.
That is a great destination for that. And then we have the optional post trip to add if you can choose either one or both or neither. Lots of flexibility. And for photographers, we anticipate we will have Jason on board for you who are interested. Just a special option for photographers of every lesson. And Jason, you're gonna have photography instruction, private photo walks, uh, instructional sessions on creating dynamic travel photos, image review and feedback, and hands-on instructions and so forth. So that package will be an option if you're a photographer on. So whether you're a photographer or a traveler, whatever, we have an amazing private yacht charter. Again, that's August 27th. Of course, this is a small ship. Space is extremely limited. We're talking about 10 rooms currently available. So if you are interested in joining us, it's imperative. If you're interested in joining us, you need to get that reservation in because this will sell out, and deposits only $900 per person or $1,800 for a stateroom. And we do have a website with all the details on the event. If you're watching, if you just leave a comment there, if you're watching live, I'll get that website out to you. Otherwise, just message me and we'll get a link out to that. It has all the information on that trip. So anything to add to that, Jason?
It's going to be killer. It's going to be a very exciting trip. Having done it, I can say that it's a place that I will have no issue going back to.
I'm just telling you, folks, Croatia is the most magical place you've never been. I'll just tell you that right now. Our giveaway this evening, folks, if you're watching live, this is just for our live listeners. Enter Croatia in the Croatia in the comments. I'm going to draw one name, and I'm going to send our winner a bottle of fine Croatian olive oil so you can taste the difference. It's such a cut above what you find in our supermarkets. So finally, be sure to join us for Let's Talk Travel again next week when our guest will be Julia Glick from Virgin Voyages. Julia and I have both recently sailed on board their new Scarlet Lady, and we're anxious to share our experience on board that exciting, trend-setting new cruise line. So plan now to tune in again next Tuesday. Folks, Jason, thank you again for joining us. We so appreciate it. And
my pleasure.
You just been a great guest, and we're so glad you're part of Dancing Moon Travel. And folks, see you again next week. Thanks for tuning in.